Right now, President Cyril Ramaphosa says it is critical that South Africa be given space to extract oil and gas as it takes part in a global energy transition away from fossil fuels. He was speaking today at the mining Indaba in Cape Town. For more, we take you to Cape Town now, where eNCA's business anchor Rofhiwa Madzena is standing by. Rofhiwa, what has been the reaction from business to the president's speech?
Hi, Masako. Absolutely mixed reaction, because what people talk about the president is that he really knows what to say. He knows the right things to say to the relevant stakeholders. But the implementation, as we know in South Africa, is very slow. It's laborious, and it frustrates those in different industries. And of course, here we're focusing on the mining industry. But we're going to speak now with Mzila Mthenjane, who's from Exxaro, just to speak about a reflection of what the president had to say, but also the broader mining industry and some of the ways in which this particular company is adjusting to the changing times. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. So I was just saying there that the president knows exactly what to say to the right people in terms of making or creating a conducive operating environment. And one of the things that's always been talked about is the slow pace in which things are done from a government side, whether it's structural reform or anything of the sort. And he addressed that this morning. Your perspective as Exxaro on that and the direction in which South Africa is moving in.
Yeah, and that's always been an issue when it comes to economic development. We do need to move at pace. And I think for me, one of the interesting things in listening to the president, not only this morning, but in terms of his previous speeches, you'll recall when he spoke about the train that could connect the different provinces. You work that backwards to what that would mean for the mining industry in terms of the metals and minerals that would be required for that infrastructure, the number of jobs that could be created from that. Those opportunities are there, and it's really about how government can work together with business in order to make those projects be realized.
One of the other big themes that are being ventilated over the next, the last few days and towards the end of the week is this issue of innovation in the mining industry to address issues of climate change, as an example. I mean, what are some of the projects that Exxaro is working on in acknowledging the issues that we have across the African continent and the changes that need to be made?
So, I must also say and preface the response, the mining industry has always been innovative. The South African mining industry has been amongst the top in the world in terms of mining innovation. Look at deep level gold mine, for instance, as an example, as well as platinum. From an Exxaro perspective, given our coal business, I think we were innovative firstly in terms of just looking at the strength of the current coal business and what it can do for us to position us to be able to transform and transition. So that's one area in terms of the management of the resources and reserves. But I think a big area which is a subject of this conference is renewable energy and the opportunities in terms of making any mine more carbon efficient. And that's removing the scope 2, as is often spoken about, in terms of the electricity we buy from coal-based energy. Taking that out of the equation is improving the costs of the business as well as reducing carbon emissions. But also there are other technologies. We saw how Anglo Platinum launched their hydrogen truck. That's a huge innovation that was developed in the country and in collaboration with other manufacturers. And so we're looking at the whole value chain of innovation. The other innovations for Exxaro is looking at how we pair technology with employees. So our philosophy was never one of replacing employees, but rather enhancing the productivity of employees in terms of how they work together with technology. And all of this technology is really targeted towards ensuring that we don't add more carbon, we reduce the cost of energy, and by doing that we reduce the overall cost of production, which ensures the sustainability of our business.
And I'm glad you bring up the issue of energy, because it's been widely talked about that this just energy transition or changing and innovating the way mining is done, Eskom is an integral part of that transition, and it probably shouldn't be left out of the conversation.
Nobody should be left out of this conversation. I mean, earlier in the year, the minister made mention of the fact that the coal industry should not be left out of this conversation. We cannot afford for others to speak on our behalf. And I think most importantly, we cannot afford to leave behind the most vulnerable communities and those communities that depend on the coal value chain. And so that's something else that we as Exxaro, together with other partners such as the Impact Catalyst platform, with Anglo American, with government in terms of CSIR as well as the IDC, are looking at how we implement projects that will sustain livelihoods when coal mining eventually stops.
No, absolutely. Let's move on to another issue now, Transnet, our infrastructure in South Africa, the rail networks as well as the ports. Give us a sense of the kind of issues that you have had, the impact that it's had on the business, but also the engagements that you are having with Transnet. We spoke to the CEO yesterday who indicated that there's a very encouraging partnership that's being created with various operators within the economy.
And that's where I'll probably start, because I think that's really the most important thing. The issues have been spoken about in the media since last year when we were reporting on our results, and again this year. But I think to her point, the engagements that have been taking place between Transnet and the other coal mining industry, and it's not just the coal mining industry, you have other commodities as well, has really been constructive. And that's encouraging, and so both partners are looking towards a solution rather than pointing fingers at each other in terms of what has gone wrong. We're at a time where we need to work together across industries, across commodities, to find a solution to this challenge.
Has Exxaro made any investment to the particular infrastructure that you want to see working the most efficiently?
Well, we worked with TFR in terms of our Waterberg operations, where we invested in a loadout station to be able to improve the efficiency of handling coal and particularly loading it onto the trains that Transnet is operating. And we've also invested in new projects which were pledged as part of the President's investment conference. So there's been almost 10 billion rands that we've invested in the Waterberg to improve and increase our coal production as well as the efficiency of running the operations. And it's really Transnet that we've been engaging with to ensure that we're able to fully utilize that infrastructure.
A final question from you, Mzila. Your thoughts on the outlook for the mining industry. The President constantly calls it the sunrise industry, and he's very hopeful in terms of its continued contribution to the economy. Just your overall thoughts on the outlook.
The outlook is very positive for the mining industry. So as we're planning for this low carbon future, it's going to be a very metal intensive future that we're going into, and there's going to be a need for mining. Everything that we're going to need to be able to live in a higher temperature world, to be able to cope, is going to require that we actually mine those metals and minerals. So the prospects for mining are really positive. So we saw, for instance, when China was developing, we had a commodity boom. And a lot of the research that's coming through is that we're going to see an even bigger boom, not just in South Africa, but in the rest of the continent. And the continent is the destination for a lot of the metals that are going to be required. And so I think we really need to ensure that from a policy environment we've got a supportive policy, and that we've got good working relationships between government and business and our social partners, and ensure that we can use the industry to transport and enable us to transition to this low carbon world.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Wide-ranging conversations, Masego, that are happening, and we'll continue to bring you those as they unfold and as we approach the end of this particular conference. For now, though, it's back to you, Masego. I'm going to go find some more interesting voices to weigh in on these important conversations.
All right, Rofhiwa Madzena at the ICC in Cape Town for us. Well, that concludes